I'm Tony Grassa from Ravenswood Technology Group, and today we're going to be talking about staying in sync and keeping your clock synchronized in your Active Directory environment. Let's talk about the real world case of Clifford Stoll. Clifford worked at Berkeley in the 1980s as an astronomer and also worked to manage the computer labs there. At the time, computer resources had to be paid for, and they were billed by the minute. Clifford was responsible for tracking down a deficit of about 75 cents, which accounted for 9 minutes of unpaid for computer time. Clifford did eventually find this time thief and also found out that this person was sending commands through Berkeley to defense contractors looking for terms such as nuclear and strategic defense. This wasn't an ordinary event, this was serious. Clifford reported his findings, and eventually the hacker was arrested in Germany. So you might be wondering why time synchronization is important to you or your organization. Well, time synchronization impacts lots of things. If you've ever seen an expiration date on a certificate, that has to do with time. If your clocks are wrong, you won't be able to use those and you won't be able to visit websites. Things like OTPs, the digits that pop up on your phone when you perform two-factor authentication, those rely on accurate time. Any Windows admin will be able to tell you that time is important for Kerberos. If your domain controllers and workstations are out of sync, you might not be able to log in. Even beyond that, in the case of Clifford, we have to look at logs. If the timestamps on your logs are not accurate, it's going to be much harder to get the full story, and we'll be wondering if your logs are doing what they're supposed to be doing in the first place. So now that we know that time is important, what is the model that we're going to be following in order to make sure that time synchronization is working correctly in our environment? Well, most organizations follow the strategy of multiple independent external time sources. You want to find time sources that are provided by large corporations or governments that you can use to act as the source of truth for your environment. Then you'll have one primary time server within your environment that acts as the source of truth internally. Then all of your other clients will synchronize time from that, ensuring that everything in your organization is following the same time. There are multiple time protocols leveraged in order to help computers determine where they should be syncing their time from. Most commonly is NTP, or Network Time Protocol. Windows has a specific version of this called NT5DS, which is essentially a fancy version of NTP that allows clients to automatically determine who they should be talking to in order to configure their time. Specifically in a Windows environment, we want to configure our primary domain controller emulator, or the domain controller holding our PDCE FSMA role, to synchronize time externally. This should be the only device in your entire organization that reaches out to an external source to determine its time. From there, your domain controllers should all sync with the domain controller holding the PDCE role. This ensures that your domain controllers are only one hop away from the device that's gathering truth externally. From there, the rest of your clients will be able to synchronize with your domain controllers, evening the load and creating a web of time distribution. I'd recommend using NT5DS in almost every situation involving Windows devices. When you have this properly configured, you won't need to worry about creating individual relationships or NTP servers. When we talked about time syncing externally to the primary domain controller emulator to the rest of your DCs to your clients, as long as all of them, except for the PDCE, are configured for NT5DS, all of that will happen automatically. And this removes a heavy burden from the busy sysadmin. Now, you'll notice I said everything but the PDCE. That means that we can configure a simple policy on your PDCE, or better yet, in group policy that follows your PDCE, to automatically adjust your time settings. With this configured, no matter how many times you transfer your FSMA roles, as long as your group policy is intact, you should not have to manually touch time configuration in your environment ever, unless there's a problem. If you're interested in a step-by-step configuration, check out my blog on ravenswoodtechnology.com. Time configuration troubleshooting doesn't have to be hard. There are a couple things that you should look for right away. Are you having trouble managing time on a guest VM? Check your host settings. Most hypervisors have time configuration settings that push time automatically to the clients without them having to do anything, which can be useful in some cases, can make troubleshooting difficult. So definitely take a look at that first to make sure your guests are not gathering time from their host. Is your machine falling back to CMOS time for some reason? In the vast majority of cases, this is simply due to an NTP misconfiguration. And if we're following the strategy of leveraging NT5DS, that means instead of doing any specific complex troubleshooting, you can simply use the W32 time settings to automatically remove and reapply your NT5DS settings. With this, don't worry about troubleshooting. Just wipe it and it'll fall right back into place where it should. And that's it for today for time synchronization. For more advice, content, and videos like this, make sure to subscribe to Ravenswood Technology Group's email, LinkedIn, and YouTube channel.